Good afternoon and welcome to the fifth in our series of personal outcome measures to decision making. Today we're going to talk about the last outcome in relationships, which is people how perform social roles, and we're going to talk about all of the outcomes in choices. So welcome again, Jill. This is Kathy Adamick, and Jill Westring is with me. We'd encourage you to use the question and answer box in order to ask any questions or have any comments that you want to share. This webinar will be recorded and will be made available in about a week to 10 days on our website. And just so you know, the feature of raising your hands is not something we can respond to. So please don't do that. Type in the question and answer box. And so without further ado, Jill, would you like to begin?
I would love to begin. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're having a lovely day. We have been using kind of the same format for those of you that are new and those of you that have been with us. We kind of go through, we're talking about Lenin, and the last four sessions, we've talked a lot about a lot of her other personal outcomes. We'll show you some of that data in just a minute. And what will happen is that I will read the slides to you regarding the story about Lenin's social roles and live, work, and choice of services to you so that everybody kind of is on the same page. Then we will do a poll, and then we will have discussion time for that. The polls will be done for both the outcome and support, and you'll see what that means in just a moment. So we're going to be talking about, as Kathy said, decision-making series about relationships and social roles, and then live, work, and choice of services for Lenin. Just a little bit about Lenin. A little background, she's 31 years old. She lives in an apartment, works at Pizza Hut, likes to shop a lot. Her favorite things are shoes, bohemian clothing and decorations, hosting dinner parties, and baking bread. She has interests in flower gardening, acting, and photography. She is not married and has no children, but does have twin nieces, Ashley and Taylor. You can see the data that we have so far. To be determined on respect is that when we teach the class and facilitating all of those, we kind of wait till the end to do that. So that'll be in series 6, which will be next month. For community, the present is a plus, and an opportunity, of course, is the O. Typing frequencies is that she wanted more of most of those, and doesn't know a lot about her personal information. So during the conversation with Lenin, we learned when we're talking about social roles that she is a friend, and she would like to see her friends more often without staff. Lenin is a daughter and an aunt. She does not have a relationship with her family and does not want one currently. She does not have a relationship with her nieces, but would like one. And Lenin is an employee. When asked about whether she would like to be a part of an organized group, she talked about seeing her friends more often without staff. There wasn't a lot of information that she had about what kind of organized group that would be. She said the staff give her a calendar of activities that organization is sponsoring at the beginning of each month, and she can decide whether she wants to go. However, she's only interested in those if her friends are going to be there. Staff tell her about opportunities for recreation and learning through the Park and Rec department and adult learning programs in her community. There's some obstacles that she didn't really know what the term social role meant. And she didn't seem to know and what opportunities are available, even though with the calendar and the Park and Rec and those sort of things, but she doesn't like to do things by herself. And from some of the historical things that we know is that barrier is that her friends, the friends that she designates, are people that are in services, and they must have a staff with them at all times. There's some other things that she does like that we know about, that she's interested in art and photography, flower and vegetable gardening. We found out a little bit more about that. Acting, her clothing and decorating, and baking bread. Staff stated that Lennon has never said anything about wanting to be in a club or a member of any committee within the organization. Staff also said that they tell Lennon about events in her neighborhood, adult education, and parks and rec opportunities. Staff have talked to her about joining a church and an advocacy group. So based on the information gathered that you could see there, and the follow-up meeting with the staff, observations, documentation, does Lennon have a social role? Does she fill a variety of social roles, and is she satisfied with the type of social roles that she has? If the answers to 1, 2, and 3 are yes, the outcome is present. If the answers to 1 and 2 is no, is it the result of informed personal choice? If it's due to that, the outcome may very well be present. Those additional considerations, if you're following along in the manual, we are on social roles decision-making on page 66 of the manual. So the additional considerations would be that the person, or Lennon, would be acknowledged and recognized in the role that she has chosen and supported to assume the aspects and responsibilities that typically accompany that role in order for the outcome to be present. A greater range of type and complexity of social roles is expected of people who have greater capabilities and supports to perform those. So for Lennon, we're going to go on to the support. And so the individualized, so mark down somewhere if that outcome, if you think that is present, because the poll will be next. So does the organization know what social roles Lennon currently fills? Has the organization assessed her interest in assuming additional roles or expanding current roles and responsibilities? Are supports provided to assist Lennon with performing chosen social roles if needed and requested? Based on the answers to these questions, are individualized supports in place? And if you will jot that down, for these purposes, we use a yes. It is either present or there is an opportunity. We don't break it down into the developing plans, aware but no plans are not in place. It's an opportunity, so the support would not be there. It's a yes and no then. So we will poll. If you wrote down, is Lennon's outcome to perform social roles present? So if you will please vote on that and or make that determination, and is the support for Lennon to perform social roles present?
So Jill, with about a little over half of the people voting, 62 out of 110, most of us, 73%, said no, the outcome is not present. 27% or 17 said yes, it is present. And this for the support, 32% said yes, Lennon has supports, and 68% or 42 said no, she does not.
Okay, the determination on this outcome for Lennon is that the outcome is not present. There's an opportunity there, and the support is not present. Although she is making choices about going to organizational activities, only if her friends are there. We found that there are many other places that she hasn't really experienced. So the EEEs, the 3 E's of exposure and experience and education on are not present at this time. The asking and acting, although she's the staff that we spoke to, kind of like, well, she's never said anything. And that's one of the things that when we talk about in POMs, of course, is that we need to be the askers, to ask, act, and advocate for people if they need it. And she really just didn't have a lot of knowledge about what's going on in the community, gardening club, community improvement committees? Are there internal or external things? And then when we look at that social role of, you know, when she said she's a daughter and an auntie, but there's no real family involvement in that. We sometimes talk about it's hard to be born into a social role unless there are additional things that you do in that role.
Okay, there are a couple of questions, Jill.
Okay.
The first one is, so is being a member of a church without taking some special role in that congregation considered a social role?
It would depend on if the person sees it as that. I mean, if it's, you know, if you're there and you're a member, you know, you don't have to take on anything else, but it would be that if people were the same expectations for anyone else that would come to church and not do anything special, you know, or not be the people that help with the offering, or not be a part of the women's club or the men's club or the Bible study. And so it would be, we would want to make sure that the person has the information that those things are available within that. And if they are interested in it, to have the support for that. But if they see that and it is part of what they do and people would miss them if they didn't show up, and kind of go, gosh, where have you been for the last 3 weeks? Yes, it could be considered. Is that it might be I mean, I've met people that they have, you know, one role, but they have done that with knowledge-based informed choice.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, so Lennon didn't understand the term social roles. Is that an imperative piece of this, the decision making?
Is it a what?
Is it imperative? Is it critical to the decision making?
No, we talked about it. I mean, the term is the same as when we talk about abuse, neglect, and exploitation. You know what it is, even though you might not know the actual terminology of that. So during this, we talked about what social roles were. And then she was like, you know, it was like clubs and this and that, and do you belong, and do you want to, and all of those things. And she said that you know, it's not imperative that they know that exact term, but rather that we start and help them explain to them what that would mean. So the short answer is no, it's not imperative, but yes, we need to do more than just say, okay, you don't understand it, so it's not there.
Okay. So I'm
Other questions?
There are no other questions at this point.
Thank you for those. So we'll move on to where Lennon lives. These are her words. I chose this apartment for, well, easy access, because I can get to my grocery, pharmacy, and shopping. That she looked for this apartment for a long time, and once she found the apartment, she had to go onto a waiting list until there was an apartment available. There were no openings at the time. She did not want to go to any other apartments that she had looked at. This was the place she wanted. She said that she knew there were other places to live, apartments and houses, and then she said, I'm never leaving here. So it was like, okay, I'm not here to help you to move or anything. She said transportation is easy, that she's close to the bus line that she takes, and she also uses cabs. The apartment manager has a key to everyone's apartment. It's a rule, but no one else has a key to her place. No one goes into my apartment without my permission. They have to call me first. She was pretty proud about that too, as it should be in all apartment buildings. She lives by herself. She had a roommate once before and had decided that she didn't want a roommate this time. Doesn't want anyone in her house when she is not there. And she said it's okay if she invites them in. It works for her. She says she does what she wants when she wants. Lennon said Sharon routinely asks her about her apartment. Is she still happy? Does she think she might want to look for someplace different? This is Sharon asking Lennon. What does she like about it? And is there anything she would like to change in her living situation? Sharon, the program manager, says Lennon is very happy. She and Lennon talk about her options, and together they evaluate how things are going. Sharon also stated that Lennon is satisfied at this time. There have been some maintenance issues, and Lennon has called the apartment manager's phone number and has it and uses it. She had called for her air conditioning wasn't working well. There was some loose tile in her kitchen, and her stove, there was some issue with her stove. It wasn't working the way she wanted it. And so she understands to call the apartment manager for those things. Sharon also said that the team reviews Lennon's choices about where she lives at her annual meeting, making sure she knows about options for different places that may be available in that same neighborhood. Her service coordinator also visits with her about her living arrangement to provide information, review options, and evaluate her satisfaction. So based on this information, does Lennon have options about where and with whom to live? If 17.1 is yes, do the options include generic, community settings, and the possibility of a private room or home? Does Lennon decide where to live? And has she selected with whom or not he or she lives? If the answers to 17.1, 2, 3, and 4 are yes, the outcome is present. Additional considerations. If Lennon has not been presented with options about where and with whom to live, and her preferences have not been determined, the outcome is not present. If she chooses to remain in a situation she did not originally choose, through a process of exploration, the outcome is present. And then for minor children, which doesn't apply to this one, but of course, minor children live with their parents. So jot down whether you think the outcome is present or not. And then we'll look at the support questions. So for support, does the organization know where and with whom Lennon wants to live, or efforts being made to learn about the preferences? Does the organization support Lennon to explore all options so she can make informed choices? Does the organization provide an array of options that includes generic options in a private room or home? Does the organization acknowledge Lennon's preferences and support her to address any barriers that prevent her from choosing where and with whom to live? And were Lennon's preferences and unique characteristics used as the home was selected? Based on the answers, please jot down if the supports are in place or not. And then we will have the poll.
So with 68 people expressing their opinion or their decision, it's not their opinion, it's what they know. Jill, 100% of the people on the call said Lennon does choose where and with whom she lives, that outcome is present. And 96% say that the supports are in place for Lennon to choose. And 4% say no, the supports are not in place.
Well done, everyone. The decision on this is that the outcome is indeed present and the support is indeed present. For these, the organization knows they have all those supports in place. They're kind of always talking to her and making sure that things are okay, and that they continue to go on with their support. Lennon knows her rights as a renter or a leaser, leaser, and so both are in place for Lennon. The organization and Lennon had worked really, really hard in securing this apartment, and Lennon was just crazy about it.
All right, Jill, there is one question so far, and that is living in a group home for people who have an intellectual or developmental disability make this outcome not present because it is not housing available to the general public?
Well, not if they chose it. I know of people that have left congregate living, licensed group homes, and have done all of their, had their own apartment and had all of that, and actually chose to go back. I have to tell you, they're far and few between. But if the person has chosen, and that's a lot of detective work and just asking a lot of questions and making sure that the EEEs, the exploration, the evaluation, those things have been done. And sometimes there are people that it's like, yeah, I need the support, and so this is where I want. But so the answer is no. It doesn't just pull this out, but we want to know as much about the positive as why they are living there.
So thank you, Jill. And if I could just add, I think the important thing, one of the important things to remember is that we are looking at, do the options that people have include generic, non-disability specific settings? And so do they have an array of options that include an opportunity not to live in a program setting, in a setting that's owned and controlled by someone else?
Right.
And when we talked about the apartment and we talked about the apartment manager, I think, in this, for Lennon, it's a typical apartment that anybody could live in. Where we frequently get this question is under integration. Not does living in a home for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities impact living in an integrated environment? And that's where we see the bigger impact of that than choosing where and with whom. However, that said, that generally speaking, if people are actively choosing, using the informed decision-making process that Jill speaks about with the education, experience, and exposure, then then they've chosen a more congregate or shared living arrangement. So hopefully that helps. But again, these two, sometimes the information that we gather about choosing where and with whom to live helps us to make decisions about living in integrated environments. And so that the outcomes really, it's a holistic approach. And that's what we have to remember. But that this would be more likely to impact people living in integrated environments. Would you agree, Jill?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and again, it's just that it's the preferences that we have to make sure that people are really, really educated about what options there are. Just as you and I have to when we're looking for a place to live.
Correct.
Yeah. Can I afford it? Can I do it? Can I do it by myself? Can I do it?
And sometimes people aren't choosing where and with whom they want to live because they don't have they can't afford it. That is true.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Very good. Thank you for those. So now we'll go on to some more our work. Lennon's been working at Pizza Hut for 3 years. It's her first paying job. Right now she's bussing and cleaning tables and will sometimes deliver the pizza to the tables if Pizza Hut is really, really busy. And they kind of say, well, take this over. She said that she likes delivering the pizza to the tables more than bussing and cleaning. She would like to learn to bake pizzas, and make and bake. When asked why she isn't doing that now, she said the manager said that she was afraid Lennon might burn herself because it's really hot. Lennon said she thinks she could do it as well as baking her own bread at home. She said she uses the gloves that everyone else uses to take the pizzas out of the other oven and has hot pads at home also. She brought up baking bread like Grandma used to make again, and although she's been told that she might burn herself, she's very interested in doing it. She also said she might like to work at a bakery, and then she could prove that she could make bread at home. When asked if there were any other interests she might have, she said she likes flowers and vegetables and helped in a garden once. She thought she might like to check into some sort of work in a garden center, maybe watering the plants like she sees when people doing that at Walmart when she's there. Lennon said that she likes her job at Pizza Hut and likes Emily, who is a co-worker. She's paid every other Friday. She likes getting her money. She feels good about working. And she was talking about a bit that she had worked once in a nursing home, at an animal shelter, the Animal Society, helping with dogs and cats, and delivered Meals on Wheels. She did not remember if she received a paycheck for doing those things. The follow-up conversation with Sharon went as follows. She wasn't sure if Lennon had any jobs before Pizza Hut or really anything about her other employment history. She said that Lennon likes working and having money. She didn't know that Lennon was interested in working at a garden center or bakery, but said it's worth checking out. They promised to talk with the job coach about Lennon making and baking pizza. And Sharon said that they talk about her work at her annual meeting. And she has never said she wants a different job or that she isn't perfectly happy. So based on that information, what does Lennon do for work? She's working at Pizza Hut. For each of the options, is she engaged in the work or other daytime activities, full or part-time? Well, she's part-time there, but it's like 32 hours. Does the person have opportunities to experience different options? If the answer to 18.2 is yes, experiencing different options, do they include generic community work or day activities? With that, does Lennon decide where to work and what to do? And you will notice on this one that the question 18.1 is for information gathering only, and then the answers to 2, 3, and 4 must be yes for the outcome to be present. Additionally, if Lennon has not been presented with options about where to work and her preferences have not been determined, then the outcome is not present. Planning begins during high school years. For pre-adolescent children, it's present as long as they're involved in educational activities. And choice may mean exploring those options, expressing preferences, and finally choosing the only option available at the time. For those of us that have at times had to take a job that wasn't our main goal, but we needed the money, we know what that feels like. So if you will please jot down whether or not that outcome is present. And then for the supports, does the organization know Lennon's interests for work or are efforts being made to learn about what she would like to do? Does the organization provide Lennon with access to varied job experiences and options? Do the options include generic, non-disability specific community work and day activities? Has the organization responded to Lennon's desires for pursuing specific work or career options with supports? has the organization supported Lennon to address any identified barriers to achieving the outcome? Based on these answers to these questions, are supports in place for Lennon to facilitate her outcome? Okay.
So 72% say that Lennon's outcome is present. 28% say, I'm sorry, 72% say it's not present. 28% say it is. And in terms of supports, we have 20% saying yes, her supports are there, and 80% saying no.
Okay, the answers to this, the outcome and support for this is that the outcome is not present, and the support is not present either. Now we've got some support going on because she's at the Pizza Hut, but that's just kind of it. There is no kind of solicitation of things, but rather waiting for Lennon to say, even though she's never mentioned wanting to work somewhere else. But from what we could tell from Lennon is that it's just not brought up because she has a job and she's been there for 3 years and she likes it and she likes Emily. But the rest of it, the job coaching about making and baking pizzas, instead of doing just the cleaning up and bussing tables, that she would like to do something else, and that's not in place presently. So it is not present for Lennon. And questions for that?
So Jill, we have one question so far. So this person attends a day service and all of the programs are community-based and they're not just for people with intellectual disability. Does that make it a generic option?
Oh, we're not talking about Lennon. That's since we closed the day programs or traditional workshops, and those are closing, and we would need to see. I mean, are people going out in a bundle, a group? Are people choosing what they're doing? Have they looked for a job? What exactly do they want? If I'm retired and doing those sort of things, that's a little different than if I'm 31 and going out in big groups to the park for a walk. Or so we would need a lot more information about what that is and what it means to the person individually in order for me to really answer that.
Thank you. So would you consider pathways or community pre-voc an assessment?
Well, it's one, yeah, they're one assessment, but her staff didn't know that she wanted something else. We wouldn't expect that the organization would just go, well, Pre-Voc has done their assessment, so this is what the person can do, or is most, has a 98% in that Pre-Voc sort of thing of being able to achieve and be successful in this certain kind of job, but rather where does it needs to start with the person as to what their likes and dislikes are. And once you're in a job, it may not turn out to be the job that you want to do for 50 years. And so just as most of us have had more than one job, we're always kind of looking and growing and figuring out, is there something more I want to do or something different, or does it still suit me? And so I would say they are assessments, but they're not the all in one. We need to continue to support people in exploring. I hope that answered it.
So and there's a follow-up, and so would you consider that having people involved in these programs might be a support to helping them to make decisions about choices they have for work. So
Sure. Again, depending on what's going on with where they're going, what they're doing, are they going to places and looking and picking up job applications? Is that part of the deal, or is it that, or is it just playtime? Or, again, we have to start with the person of saying, what is it that you think that you would be successful at, and what is it that you think you want to do? And then try to build the services around that and the supports around that.
Okay. So if Lennon had chosen, 3 years ago when she started working at Pizza Hut, she had other options and she had chosen them. Pizza Hut at that point from all of the things that, based on her interest and things, but now over the course of 3 years, her interests have changed, or she's become more aware of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that the outcome was met 3 years ago and it isn't anymore?
Sure. Yes, I think the short answer to that is yes. Although we don't. If that was the scenario, yes, the outcome would be present. But the scenario is that we don't really know the work history there. But what we do know is that she wants something different now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And so if a person is participating in a day program and they work and get paid for the work that they do for that organization while they're at the day program, and they have options within that organization to work, is the outcome present?
It's the same work that everybody else is doing, and it's a job. If it's a job and that's what they have chosen, and they beat out other candidates for it, and it's their job and paid. I mean, it's no different than you and I having a job there. If they have the same benefits, if everything remains constant and is the same, that's a job. If that's what they're choosing.
It is a job. I would agree with you. And they may have options within that organization, but do they have other options? And is this job based on their interest, and are efforts being made to learn about what else they might want to do and those kinds of things? And so I think sometimes in these, 2-sentence scenarios, it's really hard for us to make a firm decision that something is or isn't present. It is possible.
Yeah. If
that,
she chooses it. Yeah.
That the outcome might be present for this particular person. It's also possible that it may not. What we'd be looking at is what additional information do we need in order to make sure that it meets the person's interest for work, that it includes generic non-disability specific settings. So could somebody without a disability apply and get that job? And that was what Jill was saying. And did they apply and get hired as part of the hiring process? So those kinds of things. And so does that make sense? I hope to the question. Perfect. All right. That's it. Well, wait, let me just make sure that there aren't any hidden. Nope, that's it.
Very good. Thank you for the questions. So we'll go to the last of the outcomes for this session. One more slide. We're going to be talking about people choosing services. I'm sorry, that should say Lennon said she didn't know what services she receives, and that she didn't really understand what services were. When we talked about it, and it was kind of explained to her, and she said, well, I think I chose Sharon. And then she said, I don't want to change that. Sharon seems to be a very, very important person in her life. Lennon said Sharon chooses the staff who work with her. She likes the staff and said that that was okay, that Sharon could do that. And she also said that she thought maybe her family chose the organization that provides services, the one that Sharon works for, and the services and supports that Lennon receives. She gets support from the staff at home, and her job coach also works for them, the organization. She wasn't sure of other providers. She thinks someone may talk to her about it, and everything is okay there as long as Sharon is here. Everything is okay with the organization as long as Sharon's there. She's been going to her physicians for quite some time. She said they're okay. She said her doctor is a man and she is sometimes uncomfortable. She said she didn't know that she could choose a doctor who is a woman. Lennon chooses where she gets her hair cut and where she shops. In the follow-up, Sharon said that she wasn't sure how the organization assesses each area of service choice or if Lennon wants or needs help in doing so. She said Lennon seems happy with everything just the way it is. And again, she has never asked for help in changing anything. For choice of services based on that information, does Lennon select services and supports she receives? 19.2, do the services and or supports focus on Lennon's goals? 19.3, does Lennon have choices about service provider organizations? And 19.4, does Lennon have choices about direct support professional staff? If the answers to 1, 2, 3, and 4 are yes, the outcome is present. Just a second to look that over. And additionally, even though the person may not have chosen services or providers of service initially, if he or she is now choosing to maintain the service after options have been presented, the outcome is present. The place of work or place of residence is not the issue in this outcome. In relation to work and home, the outcome refers to choice in services received while the person is at home or at work. So jot down whether or not your decision is that the outcome is present. And for the supports, does the organization actively solicit Lennon's preferences about services, provider organizations, and direct support professionals in residential, in-home, employment, day, health, case management, and other? B, does the organization provide options to Lennon about services, provider organizations, and direct support professionals in those same areas? And does the organization honor Lennon's choices about services, provider organizations, and direct support professionals, residentially and daytime, employment or daytime? Based on those answers, are supports in place to facilitate Lennon's outcome?
So, Jill,
Yes.
for the outcome, 17% said yes, the outcome is present. 83% said no, the outcome for Lennon's outcome to choose services is not present. For supports, 7 people said the supports are in place, and 90% or 64 people said no, they're really not in place.
Okay, the decisions for Lennon choosing her services, the outcome is not present and the support is not present. The education and the 3 E's again, and I know we talk about that a lot, but it's the basis for informed knowledge-based choices, is to be educated and exposed to an experiential sort of thing. What are those services? Choices are not solicited. They didn't really know how Lennon would get that information, or her follow-up did not. And again, they're waiting to be told instead of the AAA first. Ask, act, and advocate for people. So for Lennon, she's choosing some of her services, but she's not aware of many of the services or what, roles she could play in making those decisions.
Okay, let's start with the first question, Jill, and it has to do with a guardian. So when the person has a guardian, is the outcome present if the guardian makes the decision on the person's behalf because the person is not cognitively able to make the choice?
Again, two sentence, we always believe that guardians are there to guard people's rights. And so if we would be asking, again, more questions, such as how do you know that these services are working? How do we know that they're successful for Lennon? How do you know that, is there anyone we would be, if it's a person that expresses themselves without words, how do they express themselves? How do you know that they like this staff? How do you know that they like this? And so, again, we would be looking for more robust information about that in order to just to make sure that all is well and that we know what's going on with that. So it could be, it's possible, but I don't have enough information with just that scenario.
Okay, thank you. So overall then, what would you suggest if you're doing an interview with a person who's pretty agreeable? They say yes to everything. So we asked, do you like your job coach? Yes. Why do you like your job coach? And they really can't give you a reason why they like the job coach. What other ideas would you have for them?
Well, that's a great question, and it starts out with the very first thing of do you like? So it's not very open-ended. So it's yes or no, and so we always want to talk to people as if we can on with open-ended questions. Tell me about your job coach. What do they do to help you? What are the things that are great that they do for you? Have you ever thought about is there someone else you would like to help you with your job? So we would be asking things that would require a little more information, and then we can, so what you're telling me is that, and then we can use the yes and no for clarification. But if my main recommendation is to start with use open-ended questions and try to get to that answer.
So there's a follow-up question from the same person, Jill.
Mm-hmm.
So often those open-ended questions, they're not able to answer them in a way where it's easily understood. So when I have to narrow the questions, when she feels like she has to narrow the questions, then she really feels like she's asking very leading questions.
Right, and that's sometimes exactly what it feels like. So it's really then that's why we ask, that you based on the information that you have gathered, seen, observed, records, speaking to the job coach, speaking to a variety or various people. We also ask things such as, well, if you didn't choose that job coach, who did? And then we can start to kind of find a pathway of who is making the decisions, and is that okay with you? Or how come someone else made the decision? Why is that? What do you think about doing it yourself? Are you, would you like to try? Would you like to be a part of helping choose your staff? And so we just continue to go through this. The information gathering notes, or the information gathering questions on page 75 are those also. And then we look again with what is the follow-up, what services does the person use, and are they identified as beneficial? Well, what are those benefits to the person? And how do you find out what the person wants? So, we use those as a guide also for support so that we can make a determination on that.
And Jill, that's a great answer. I think some of the other things that you can do is, first you want to make sure that people have a no response, and that they're, just like, when you give a list of choices, you want to make sure they're not always picking the first or the last choice. So you do want to do that to make sure that what the information that you're getting is reliable. But then there are other things that you can do, and it's not just with people who don't use words to communicate. It really is sometimes people who are very agreeable, and don't want to get anybody in trouble, or sometimes you have to come up with different ways to ask them questions. And so one of the things that I've tried in the past is, having some pictures of emotion. How do you feel when your job coach is with you? Those kinds of more questions that maybe there's some pictures that you can get, but then also asking in the follow-up interview, how does the people that support her, how do they know that she's happy with her job coach? What makes them say that? Those kinds of things. So I think, those are great questions.
You will find it with organizations that have been using the POMs for a really long time, and so people start to understand what they are. It becomes sometimes they become less agreeable when they know that they can actually state what they want in their choices. They find that they're not going to get anyone in trouble. And I actually hear that quite often.
So, Jill, the next is asking for suggestions. Assuming that, if the person has an intellectual or developmental disability and doesn't use words to communicate. So how can I, as an interviewer, ask questions and be sure that I am seeking and supporting the person's real preferences?
Right. And as we always say, when there's an interpreter involved, that you end up doing a little more digging and have a lot more questions for follow-up and whatnot, I have found, because we really want to find that space that the interpreter is telling us. And so we just really want to be able to verify those things. So that sometimes takes a little longer for the whole process. But what we're really looking for, is how do we know? How do you know? What are the signs that the person gives you? Is it that we're watching for the eye movement? And so when we're using an interpreter, we need to use the interpreter and just ask as many questions as we can about how do they know, without kind of badgering them. We don't know. How do you know that? How do you know that? But rather tell me how can you tell when Lennon is feeling good, or is content, or is hungry, or is sad, or we're just really looking for those ways of how they communicate.
Good, thanks, Jill. And I think the other thing that's important is, to try to spend as much time with the person as well, to really watch how they respond, and interact or don't interact with people.
Right. Yeah. All of those facial cues and body movements, and pushing away or pulling forward or sitting, or there's just a number of them.
Right.
Any other questions? Well, we are right on time. It is 1:59, and I thank you all for being here. Our next and last session with Lennon is coming up in September on the 26th, 1 o'clock again. And we will be looking at choosing personal goals, realizing personal goals, and respect, which is number 7 of the personal outcome